I managed to fulfill my seventh and final wish, which was to get married in a church to Michael. Even with cancer and undergoing treatment, God gave me the strength to fulfill my wish with the love of my life. I was deeply moved when I walked into the church, dressed as a bride and accompanied by my father, whom I hadn't seen in 10 years.
Story based on true events. Names, locations, and some facts have been altered to preserve the privacy of those involved.
Sometimes life teaches us that the simplest moments can change everything forever. My name is Emma. I'm 23 years old, and this is the story of how a hot dog changed the entire course of my life. I know it sounds absurd to start this way, but believe me, when you're about to discover you have cancer, every detail of the happy moments you lived before becomes precious as gold. It was a typical Tuesday in November 2023, one of those when the heat in Los Angeles made the campus asphalt seem like a frying pan. I was in my final year of business administration at the university, and like every self-respecting college student, I was constantly broke and hungry. The smell of bacon and caramelized onions from the food truck floated across campus like an irresistible calling. God, I can't stand this routine anymore, I complained to my friend Madison as we approached the already considerable line. Every day the same thing. Class, work, home, sleep, repeat. Emma, you complain, but you don't even know what's waiting for you after graduation. Madison laughed, adjusting the heavy backpack on her shoulders. At least here we still have spring break. In front of us, two guys were animatedly discussing an architecture project. One of them, brown-haired with curly hair and an easy smile, gestured while explaining something about structures. The other, quieter, just listened attentively. There was something about that second guy's calm demeanor that caught my attention. Maybe it was the way he really listened to his friend, without hurry, without looking at his phone. Hey girls! The brown-haired one turned to us with that typical confidence of someone who never had trouble starting conversations. You're from business administration, right? I've seen you around. We are, Madison replied, always more uninhibited than me. And you guys are from architecture, from your conversations. Right on target. I'm Diego and this guy here is Michael, he said, pointing to his friend. Final year too, thank God. I'm already sick of drawing isometric perspectives. Michael smiled shyly and waved. When our eyes met for the first time, I felt something strange in my stomach, and it wasn't hunger, despite not having eaten properly for 2 days. Soon we were all ordering our food from Joe, a charismatic older man who knew half the students by name. The prettiest girls from business administration, the usual Emma, hot dog with everything but no mayo. That's right, Joe, I replied, always impressed by his memory. And go heavy on the hot sauce. Michael ordered a simple burger, and Diego went for the loaded hot dog, too. Madison opted for a grilled cheese, claiming to be on a diet, something she said every single day. Why don't we sit over there? Michael suggested, pointing to a green plastic table under a tree. It's blazing hot today. We agreed, and soon the four of us were there, eating and talking as if we'd been friends for years. It's amazing how food has this power to break any social barrier. Michael sat across from me, and I could see that he had very expressive brown eyes and a gentle way of speaking. So, Emma, what's your area of interest in business administration? He asked, taking a bite of his burger. Human resources, I replied between bites of my loaded hot dog. I've always been interested in the human side of companies, you know? How people relate to each other, how to create healthier environments. Wow, that's cool. It actually has everything to do with architecture. We also design spaces thinking about the people who will use them. That's when it happened. I was so focused on the conversation, so interested in what he was saying about humanizing architectural spaces, that I didn't notice that a generous amount of hot sauce had dripped and settled in the corner of my mouth. Michael stopped talking mid-sentence, looked at me with an amused smile, and, without asking permission, took a napkin and delicately wiped the corner of my mouth. Sorry, he said, blushing a little. It's just that you had, well, now you don't. I felt my face heat up so much it must have been matching the hot sauce. Madison and Diego stopped eating to look at us with those expressions of people who just watched a romantic movie scene. Thank you, I mumbled, unconsciously touching the spot where he had wiped with the napkin. That's when life's revenge happened. Michael took a big bite of his burger and got a piece of lettuce stuck between his front teeth, hanging there like a little green flag. Hey, Romeo! Diego burst out laughing. I think you've got some lettuce decorating your smile there. Michael tried to remove it with his tongue unsuccessfully. The situation was so comical that I couldn't contain myself. I started laughing, and soon we were all dying with laughter. He blushed even more, but also laughed at himself, which I found charming. "Let me help," I offered, taking a napkin from the table. "At least this way we're even." He opened his mouth like a child at the dentist, and I delicately removed the piece of lettuce with the napkin. Our faces were very close for a few seconds, and I could smell his cologne, something fresh that reminded me of mint. "There, now you can go back to being charming," I joked, and he laughed. "Charming? Me?" "Yeah, you," I confirmed, surprised by my own courage, even with corn in your teeth. Diego and Madison exchanged a knowing look, as if they had just witnessed the birth of something special. "Guys, you two are so cute," Madison commented. "You already look like a couple." "Hold on there, Maddie," I protested, but inside I was smiling. Michael fiddled with his phone and handed it to me. "How about we exchange numbers? That way, if I ever get food in my teeth again, you can let me know via text." "And if I get sauce on my mouth?" I asked, typing my number. "Then I'll run here with a napkin," he replied, and his eyes sparkled in a way that made my heart race. After that lunch, we never stopped talking. First, it was casual messages. "Hey, how was class? Did you see that the statistics professor scheduled an exam for Friday? What movie are you watching?" Soon they evolved into long conversations about dreams, fears, plans for after graduation. I discovered that Michael was from a simple family in Riverside, the only child of a construction worker and a seamstress. He chose architecture because he always drew very well and dreamed of designing accessible, affordable housing. He had a sweet way of talking about the people he loved and a worldview that enchanted me. He discovered that I came from Anaheim, daughter of a saleswoman who raised me and my brother Jake alone after my father left home when I was 13. I told him about my dream of working at a big company, helping create environments where people felt valued. The weeks flew by. We met to study in the library, had coffee together during class breaks, shared laughs, and also the typical anxieties of college students about to graduate. Michael had a unique way of calming me down when I freaked out about my thesis or job interviews. "Relax, Emma," he would say, taking my hand in his. "You're incredible. Any company would be lucky to have you." And I believed him when he said that, because I saw sincerity in his eyes. December arrived, and with it, graduations. Mine would be first, on the 15th. Michael didn't hesitate when I invited him. He said he wouldn't miss it for anything in the world. The graduation was at the city's Civic Theater. When I came out of the dressing room with my black gown and cap on my head, I found Michael waiting for me in the main lobby, handsome in a navy blue suit and gray tie. "Wow," was all he could say, looking me up and down with admiration. "I look ridiculous, don't I?" I joked, adjusting my cap. "You look perfect," he said, approaching. "The most beautiful business administrator I've ever seen." The ceremony was moving. When they called my name, Emma Claire Johnson, and I went up on stage to receive my diploma, I looked for Michael in the audience. He was standing, clapping enthusiastically, with a proud smile on his face as if it were him graduating. After the official ceremony, there was a party in the hotel ballroom. I was radiant, celebrating with my mom, my brother, and some classmates. Michael didn't leave my side, introducing me to everyone as Emma, my favorite person from college. "Want to dance?" he asked me when All of Me by John Legend started playing. I'm not a good dancer, but we swayed slowly in the middle of the dance floor. Michael led me gently, one hand on my waist and the other holding mine. We talked quietly as we moved. "Thank you for being here," I whispered. "Thank you nothing. I should thank you for inviting me. It was an honor to see you graduate." "Michael? Yeah? I'm so happy we met in that line." He stopped dancing and looked into my eyes. "Me too, Emma. Very happy." The music continued. People around us danced, but it seemed like there were only the two of us there. Michael raised his hand and delicately moved a strand of my hair that had fallen over my face. "Can I tell you something?" he asked, nervous. "Of course. Since that hot dog day, I can't stop thinking about you. You're special, Emma. Very special." My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. "You're special to me too," I admitted. "Very special." That's when he leaned in and kissed me. A sweet, tender kiss that sealed something that had been growing between us for months. When we separated, there were tears in my eyes. Not from sadness, but from a pure happiness I had never felt before. "Wow," was all I could say. "Wow," he agreed, smiling. The following week flew by. I was on cloud 9, counting the days until Michael's graduation. It was December 22nd, also at the Civic Theater. This time, I was the one in the audience, proud to see my boyfriend, special friend. We hadn't defined it yet, but after that kiss, we were definitely more than friends. Michael looked handsome in his black gown. When they called his name, Michael James Anderson, I stood up and clapped like a fanatic cheerleader. He found me in the crowd and winked. After the ceremony, we met in the lobby. He came running toward me and picked me up, spinning me around. "I did it! I graduated!" he shouted, happy. "You did! I'm so proud of you." We kissed right there, in the middle of the chaos of families celebrating. The architecture party was at a local event venue. When we arrived, Michael immediately took me to meet his parents, Mr. Robert and Mrs. Maria. "Dad, Mom, I want you to meet Emma," Michael said, pulling me by the hand. "The famous Emma," Mrs. Maria exclaimed, hugging me warmly. "Michael doesn't stop talking about you. It's an honor to meet you, honey." "The pleasure is mine, Mrs. Maria," I replied, embarrassed but happy. "And this is my girlfriend," Michael continued, addressing a group of classmates who approached. "Girlfriend." He called me his girlfriend publicly, in front of everyone. I felt my face heat up, but it was a good warmth, of someone who belongs to someone special. During the party, Michael introduced me to everyone as my girlfriend Emma. With each introduction, I felt more special, more important, more loved. "I liked being called girlfriend," I whispered in his ear while we were dancing. "You did?" "I loved it." "Good thing, because I plan to call you that for a long time," he said, kissing my forehead. "How long do you think is a long time?" I asked playfully. "How about forever?" We laughed, but there was seriousness in his eyes. And however scary it was, there was seriousness in mine too. The beginning of 2024 was magical. I had gotten an internship at a medium-sized company in human resources, and Michael was accepted at an architecture firm on the West Side. We were starting our professional lives and building our relationship at the same time. On weekends, we strolled through downtown Los Angeles, discovering coffee shops and bookstores. Michael loved showing me architectural details of old buildings, and I loved watching him talk passionately about what he studied. "See that window there?" he would point. "Notice the wrought ironwork. Everything was handmade back then." "It's really beautiful," I would agree. But honestly, I was more interested in watching him talk than the windows themselves. Little by little, our lives intertwined. He met my mom and my brother, who adored him. I practically became family to the Andersons. Mrs. Maria always insisted I stay for lunch when I visited them. Our relationship was easy, natural. We talked about everything, laughed together, dreamed together. Michael talked about opening his own firm someday. I dreamed of doing graduate school and maybe a master's degree. Our plans began to include each other naturally. "When I open my firm, you can handle the HR part," he suggested once. "And when I do my master's, you can give me tips on how to organize my studies," I retorted. They were small promises of the future, seeds of a life together that we planted without realizing it. The first half of 2024 flew by. I was loving my job in the HR department, and Michael was gaining valuable experience at the firm. In our spare time, we studied together for competitions and better job opportunities. It was in July, exactly 2 years after our first meeting, that our life took a completely different direction. It started with abdominal pains that I insisted on ignoring. "Must be work stress," I would say when Michael asked how I was feeling. "Or PMS," I would add, trying to change the subject. But the pains kept getting stronger and more constant. I would wake up some nights writhing in pain, and Michael noticed my discomfort even when I tried to hide it. "Emma, this isn't normal," he insisted. "You need to see a doctor." "Oh, Michael, stop being dramatic. It's just a little pain." "A little pain that makes you cry in the bathroom when you think no one's looking?" He was right. The pain was interfering with my work, my sleep, our relationship. But I had always been very afraid of doctors. It was on a Monday morning that Michael made the decision for me. "Done. I made an appointment for you this afternoon with a general practitioner," he said, handing me a paper with the address. "Michael, how can you make an appointment for me without telling me? Because you would never make one yourself, and I can't stand seeing you suffer anymore." I was mad at him at first, but deep down I knew he was right. The pain was getting worse, and I needed to find out what it was. Dr. Fernando Martinez was a charismatic man in his 50s, with a paternal manner that put me at ease. I explained about the pain, where it hurt, when it started, what it was like. He examined me and asked some detailed questions. Then he got a worried expression that he couldn't completely hide. "Emma, I'm going to order some basic tests first," he said, scribbling on a prescription. "Complete blood count, abdominal ultrasound, a few other things, just to make sure it's nothing serious." "Nothing serious like what?" I asked, feeling my stomach go cold. "Let's do the tests first, okay? Let's not worry unnecessarily." But the way he said it left me very worried. Michael accompanied me to do the tests. We went to a lab near the office, and he held my hand while I had blood drawn. "Everything's going to be okay," he whispered. "I'm sure it's nothing major." I wanted to believe him. With all my heart's strength, I wanted to believe. The results would be ready in 2 days. They were the longest 48 hours of my life. Michael tried to distract me with movies, walks, conversations about other topics, but I couldn't think about anything else. On Thursday, we returned to Dr. Martinez's office. He had my test results on his desk, and his serious expression let me know they weren't good news even before he opened his mouth. "Emma, Michael, please sit down," he said gently. My hand automatically sought Michael's. He squeezed tight. "The test showed some changes that concern me," Dr. Martinez began. "Nothing definitive yet, but I need you to see a specialist as soon as possible." "What kind of specialist?" Michael asked because I was speechless. "An oncologist." The word fell in the office like a bomb. Oncologist. Cancer. All my worst fantasies materialized in that single word. But it could be other things, right, doctor?" My voice came out shaky. "It could, dear. That's why we need more specific tests. I'm going to refer you to Dr. Ricardo Williams. He's an excellent professional. He'll do a complete evaluation." We left the office in total silence. In the elevator, Michael hugged me tight, and I started to cry. It wasn't hysterical crying. It was silent crying, from someone who had just had a terrible premonition confirmed. "Everything's going to be okay," he repeated, kissing my hair. "Everything's going to be okay, my love." But for the first time since we'd known each other, I felt that even he didn't completely believe his own words. The appointment with Dr. Ricardo Williams was scheduled for the following Monday. The weekend passed like a blur of anxiety and desperate attempts at normalcy. Michael tried to distract me, but I could see the worry in his eyes, even when he forced a smile. On Sunday morning, I woke up with a strange feeling. It wasn't fear. It was an urgent need to be close to God. It had been a while since I went to church regularly, but at that moment, I felt I needed to be there. "Michael, should we go to church today?" I asked while we were having coffee. He looked at me surprised. "Of course, love. If you want to go, let's go." Grace Community Church, where my mom always took me and Jake when we were little, was 2 blocks from my house. We arrived a little late and sat in the back row. Pastor Thomas, an older man with white hair who had known my family for years, was talking about trusting in God during difficult times. It was as if the sermon had been written specifically for me. "My brothers and sisters," the pastor said with a serene voice, "sometimes God allows storms to enter our lives not to destroy us, but to show us what we're made of. It's in adversity that we discover our true strength, our capacity to love and be loved." Tears began to flow down my face. Michael took my hand and squeezed gently. "And when the storm comes," the pastor continued, "remember, we are not alone. The love we cultivate, the people we touch, the lives we transform, that is eternal. That never dies." I left church with a strange sense of peace. Not that I wasn't scared anymore. I was terrified. But there was a new clarity, an acceptance of what was to come, whatever it might be. Monday came too quickly. Dr. Ricardo Williams was a tall man, about 45 years old, with a serious but gentle manner. His office was full of diplomas and certificates, which made me more confident and more nervous at the same time. "Emma, from the tests that Dr. Martinez sent me, I'm going to need to do some more specific tests," he explained. "CT scan, MRI, biopsy. Let's investigate exactly what's happening." "Doctor," I interrupted, trembling, "what exactly do you suspect?" He hesitated for a moment, looking at Michael and then at me. "There's a possibility of it being a tumor in the ovaries, but let's confirm first before drawing any conclusions. Ovarian tumor. Ovarian cancer." The words echoed in my head like funeral bells. The next few days were a confusing sequence of tests, hospitals, noisy machines, and needles. Michael didn't leave my side for a minute. He missed work, canceled commitments, became my protective shadow. You don't have to be with me all the time, I would say, but without much conviction. I do, he would reply, kissing my forehead. There's nowhere in the world I'd rather be than by your side. On Thursday, we returned to Dr. Williams' office for the results. I was prepared for the worst, but nothing really prepares us for the moment when our life is divided into before and after. Emma, Michael, he began, and from the tone of voice I knew. Unfortunately, we've confirmed that it's ovarian carcinoma. Stage 3. The world stopped. Literally stopped. I could see the doctor's mouth moving, explaining things about staging, treatment, prognosis, but it was as if he was speaking underwater. Michael asked a question I couldn't process. The doctor answered something about survival rates, chemotherapy, surgery. What's the chance? I heard my own voice ask. Dr. Williams sighed. With appropriate treatment, we're talking about approximately 15 to 20% chance of complete cure. But each case is unique, Emma. We're going to fight with everything we have. 15 to 20%, 80 to 85% chance of dying. I was 25 years old and would probably die. We left the office like zombies. In the car, Michael leaned against the steering wheel and started crying. Deep, desperate crying from someone who had just had their heart shattered. I didn't cry. I was in shock, in a strange calm before the emotional storm that would come. Hey, I whispered, touching his arm. Look at me. He lifted his red, tear-soaked face. 15% is still a chance, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. And even if it's not, even if I'm not part of the 15%, I don't want to spend the time I have left crying. Emma? No, let me talk. I might die, Michael. I probably will die. But until then, I want to live. Really live. I want to do things I've always dreamed of, go to places I've always wanted to see, talk to people who are important to me. He looked at me with a mixture of admiration and sadness. I'll be with you, he said, taking my hand. In everything. Whatever you want to do, I'll be by your side. That night, they admitted me to the hospital to begin pre-chemotherapy procedures. Michael got permission to stay with me, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair next to my bed. It was dawn when the idea came. I was awake, watching the IV drip slowly, thinking about everything that could happen in the coming months. Michael was finally sleeping, after an exhausting day. I took a notepad that was on the hospital bedside table and started writing. A list. A list of things I wanted to do before I died. It wasn't morbid. On the contrary, it was liberating. It was a way to transform the time I had left into something meaningful, into memories that would be worthwhile. I wrote slowly, thinking about each item. Spend a night camping under the stars, away from the city I had always wanted to camp, to sleep looking at the sky, to feel like I was part of the universe in a more primitive and true way. Learn to cook with a professional chef and cook for my boyfriend Michael loved to eat, and I had always been terrible in the kitchen. I wanted to prepare something special for him, with my own hands. Hot air balloon ride watching the sunset. I saw photos on the internet and always thought it was magical. I wanted to feel what it was like to be suspended in the sky, seeing the world from up there. Volunteer work at a hospital. I was there, seeing so many people suffering alone. I wanted to help somehow, give back the care I was receiving. Visit a prison. I had always been curious about how people who made serious mistakes lived. I wanted to understand, maybe even help someone. Reconcile with my father, the hardest on the list. 10 years without seeing him, 10 years of hurt. But if I was going to die, I didn't want to carry this bitterness with me. Get married in church with the great love of my life, Michael. I wanted to be his officially, before God and all the people we loved. 7 wishes, 7 weekends, if God allowed. I didn't know how much time I had ahead, but I wanted every moment to be worthwhile. Michael woke up and saw me writing. What are you doing, love? I'm making a list, I replied, showing him the paper. 7 things I want to do before I can't anymore. He read in silence, and I saw various emotions pass across his face. When he finished, his eyes were teary again. We're going to do everything, he said with determination. Every item on this list. I promise you. Michael, you don't have to. I do. Actually, I want to. I want to live all of this with you. I want us to have the best possible memories. And so began our journey through the 7 wishes. Between chemotherapy sessions, on weekends when I felt stronger, we would cross off an item from the list. The first was camping under the stars. Michael researched everything, the best places near Los Angeles, equipment, weather forecast. He chose a campground in Big Sur, in the mountains, known for its clear sky and panoramic view. "Are you sure you're up for this?" he asked as we packed our backpacks on Saturday morning. "I'm sure I need this," I replied, adjusting the hat that hid my recent baldness. Chemo had taken my hair, but not my spirit. The trip to Big Sur was beautiful. Michael drove slowly, stopping at viewpoints so we could photograph the landscape. I was feeling good, excited about our first list adventure. The campground was on top of a hill, surrounded by pine trees and with an incredible view of the valley. Michael set up our tent like an experienced scout, which he definitely wasn't. "Where did you learn to do this?" I asked, laughing at his struggle with the ropes. "YouTube University," he replied, sweating. "I watched about 10 videos last night. When night fell, we made our first campfire. Michael had brought marshmallows, and we sat there roasting them and talking about life, about us, about the dreams we still had. "You know what's funny?" I said, looking at the flames. "I've never felt as alive as I do now that I know I might die." "What do you mean?" "I don't know. It's like every moment is more intense, more important. Like I finally woke up for real." Michael took my hand. "You were always intense, Emma. You were always special. Cancer didn't change that." Later, we lay in the sleeping bag with the tent roof open, looking at the starry sky. It was exactly as I had imagined. Infinite, magical, humbling, and comforting at the same time. "See that constellation there?" Michael pointed. "Which one?" "I don't know the name, but it looks like a heart." I looked where he was pointing, and there really was a cluster of stars that resembled a heart. "It's our heart," I whispered. "Our constellation." We made love there under the stars, slowly, as if we had all the time in the world, and at that moment, I felt we did. The second wish was to learn to cook with a professional chef. Michael managed, through a friend who worked in gastronomy, to get the contact of Chef Pierre Dubois, a Frenchman who gave private lessons in Los Angeles. Chef Pierre was an elegant man in his 60s, with a heavy accent and paternal manner. When Michael explained our situation, he refused to accept payment. "Non, non," he said, waving his hand. "It will be an honor to teach this belle jeune femme." He came to our house on a Tuesday afternoon. He had brought all the ingredients to teach coq au vin, one of the most classic dishes in French cuisine. "The secret, ma chérie," he explained while teaching me to cut onions, "is in patience. French cuisine is like love. You cannot be in a hurry." Michael watched from afar, smiling as he saw me so concentrated peeling carrots and preparing the mise en place. "Maintenant," said Chef Pierre. "We're going to brown the chicken. High heat, but not too high. It's an equilibre." I spent 3 hours learning every step, every secret, every trick that made that dish special. Chef Pierre was a patient and caring teacher, correcting me gently when I made mistakes. "Voilà, parfait," he exclaimed when we tasted the final result. "You have chef's hands, ma petite." At lunch, I served the dish to my family. My mom, my brother Jake, and my Aunt Susan couldn't believe I had made that. "Emma, this is better than a restaurant," said my mom, with tears in her eyes. That evening, Michael and I went to a romantic inn in Big Bear that he had reserved. We took all the ingredients and I remade the dish for him, in a rustic kitchen overlooking the mountains. I set the table with candles, flowers, and a bottle of red wine. When I served the coq au vin, Michael took my hand and kissed it. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For letting me be part of this, for sharing these moments with me." I should have been the one thanking, but I understood what he meant. Those moments were special for both of us. The third wish was the balloon ride. We went to Temecula, inland Southern California, famous for balloon flights. Michael had scheduled it for late afternoon to watch the sunset from up there. When I saw the balloon being inflated, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. It was huge, colorful, beautiful, but the idea of being suspended in the air still gave me butterflies. "Scared?" Michael asked. "A little. You?" "Very," he laughed. "But if you're up for it, I'm up for it." The pilot, Captain Marcus, was an experienced man who reassured us with his calm and knowledge. We got into the basket with 4 other people. When we started going up, I felt my stomach freeze. But as we gained altitude, the fear gave way to enchantment. The view was indescribable. "My God," I whispered, clutching Michael's arm. Down below, the world looked like a green and brown carpet, cut by roads that looked like pencil lines. The houses were white dots, the cars ants moving slowly. "It's like seeing Earth from God's point of view," Michael said, amazed. When the sun began to set, the sky became a canvas of impossible colors. Orange, pink, purple, gold, everything mixing in a visual symphony that made me cry with emotion. Michael hugged me from behind, and we stood there in silence, absorbing that moment. It was as if we were suspended between heaven and earth, between life and eternity. "I love you," I whispered. "I love you too, infinitely." The fourth wish was to do volunteer work at the hospital. This one arose naturally from my experience as a patient. I was doing chemo 3 times a week, and I always noticed how some patients were alone, without visitors, without conversation. I met Mrs. Rose, a 78-year-old lady who had been hospitalized in the oncology ward for 2 weeks. Her children lived in other states and rarely managed to visit her. I started keeping her company on the afternoons when I was at the hospital. "You're an angel," she always said. "You appeared in my life when I needed it most." We talked about everything: her youth in the countryside, her children, her dessert recipes. She taught me prayers she learned from her grandmother, and I read magazines to her when her eyesight tired. It was talking to Mrs. Rose that I discovered how faith can be a powerful medicine. She faced breast cancer with a serenity that inspired me. "My child," she would say, "God never gives us a burden greater than we can carry. You'll see that you'll come out of this stronger." I decided to expand this work. I talked to the youth group from my church and proposed we create a prayer group to visit patients in the hospital. "It's a beautiful idea, Emma," said Father Thomas when I presented the proposal. "Let's organize this." We created the group Living Hope. Every Thursday from 7 to 8 p.m., we went to Cedars-Sinai Hospital to pray with patients who accepted our visit, always respecting those who didn't want it, always with nursing permission. On the first official visit, there were 6 of us. We met Mrs. Clara, a 70-year-old lady hospitalized for a month with severe pneumonia. Her children had fought over inheritance and stopped visiting her. "How long have you been doing this?" she asked, moved after our prayer. "It's our first official time," replied Marcus, one of the guys from the group. "But we want to come every week." "Every week?" Her eyes sparkled. "You'll come back every week?" "Every week," I confirmed. "If you want." She cried. A 70-year-old lady, alone in a hospital, crying because a group of young people would visit her once a week. It made me realize how small gestures can mean the world to someone. The group grew. In 2 months, we were 15 people. We created a schedule, training on how to talk to patients in serious condition, how to respect different religions and beliefs. "You didn't just fulfill your dream," said Pastor Thomas at one of our meetings. "You created something that will last much longer than any of us." He was right. Living Hope continues to this day, bringing comfort and prayer to people who need it most. The 5th wish on my list was perhaps the most unusual: visiting a prison. Since childhood, I had always had a strange curiosity about how people who committed serious crimes lived. It wasn't morbid. It was a need to understand human nature in its darkest facets. Michael was initially worried about the idea. "Emma, are you sure? With your immunity low from chemo, it could be dangerous." "Michael, I'm not going to fight anyone in there," I laughed, adjusting my colorful scarf on my head. "I just want to talk, understand, maybe help someone somehow." After several calls and a lot of bureaucracy, we got authorization to visit a women's correctional facility in the region. The warden, Dr. Carlos Rodriguez, a serious but sensitive man, was touched when Michael explained our situation. "Your girlfriend has cancer and wants to visit our prison as one of her last wishes?" he asked, incredulous. "That's right," Michael confirmed. "She wants to make a difference in people's lives, even if she doesn't have much time." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "You know what? I'm going to do more than authorize the visit. I'm going to ask if she'd be willing to speak to the inmates in the yard. We have women here who have completely lost hope. Maybe her story could touch some hearts." So the following Saturday, Michael and I headed to the north side of the city. The prison was exactly as I had imagined. High walls, barbed wire, guard towers, an environment that breathed claustrophobia and despair. We went through several searches and security gates until we reached the inner courtyard. There were approximately 50 women sitting on improvised bleachers, looking at me with curiosity and distrust. "Doctor." Rodriguez introduced me simply. "This is Emma. She's 25 years old and wanted to come here to talk to you because, well, I'll let her explain." I took the microphone with trembling hands. Not from fear, but from emotion. I looked at those faces, young, old, marked by life, some hard, others still with traces of sweetness. "Hi, everyone," I began, trying to sound natural. "My name is Emma, and, well, I have cancer. Ovarian cancer, in advanced stage. The doctors gave me between 15 and 20% chance of survival." A low murmur passed through the bleachers. Some women leaned forward, others crossed their arms defensively. When I discovered that I would probably die young, I made a list of things I wanted to do before leaving, and one of those things was to meet you. "Why?" shouted a voice from the back. It was a black woman, about 40 years old, with a defiant look. "Because I believe everyone deserves a second chance. Because I believe that no matter what we did in the past, we can always choose to be different from now on." I told my story, the relationship with Michael, professional dreams, the devastating diagnosis, the list of 7 wishes. I talked about camping under the stars, about learning to cook for someone I loved, about volunteer work at the hospital. "You are my 5th wish," I said, feeling tears in my eyes. "I still have 2 left. Reconciling with my father, who abandoned me when I was a child, and getting married in church to the man I love." The silence in the courtyard was total. Some women were crying openly. "But why do you want to reconcile with your father if he abandoned you?" asked a young woman, about 22 years old, with tattoos on her arms. "Because forgiving isn't about what the other person deserves," I replied, surprising myself with the clarity of the answer. "It's about freeing myself from the weight of resentment. I don't want to die carrying hate in my heart." That's when a woman stood up. It was the same one who had asked why I was there. She approached the microphone with determined steps. "My name is Victoria," she said, voice firm. "I've been here 6 years for drug trafficking. I have a 12-year-old daughter I haven't seen in 2 years because she's ashamed of me." Her voice began to tremble. "Hearing you speak, I realized I've wasted these years feeling angry at the world, angry at myself, angry at God. But you're dying and chose to forgive, chose to love, chose to do good." Tears rolled down her face. "I want to be different. I want my daughter to be proud of me when I get out of here. How do I do that?" I looked at Dr. Rodriguez, who nodded encouragingly. "How about we start a Bible study group here?" I suggested impulsively. "I can talk to the people from my church. We can come twice a month, study the Bible, pray together, talk about new beginnings." The buzz in the courtyard was immediate. Several hands went up, voices overlapped in expressions of interest. "I want to participate. When do we start? Will you really come back?" Dr. Rodriguez approached the microphone. "If Emma can organize this, the prison administration will give full support. We have a study room that can be used." And so the New Beginning Project was born. In partnership with my church, we organized bi-weekly meetings at the correctional facility. It wasn't forced evangelization, it was a space for reflection, to talk about forgiveness, about second chances, about finding purpose even in the most difficult circumstances. Victoria became one of the group leaders. In 3 months, she reconciled with her daughter and began studying for the GED, dreaming of studying psychology when she got out on parole. "You changed my life," she told me at one of our meetings. "You made me understand that no matter where we are, we can always choose who we want to be." The 6th wish was the most emotionally difficult. Reconciling with my father. 10 years. 10 years without seeing him, without talking to him, carrying a mixture of hurt, anger, and deep-down longing. His name was Robert Johnson, and the last time I saw him, I was 15. Michael understood that this was a wish I needed to fulfill, even knowing how painful it was for me to talk about my father. "Let me hire a private investigator," he suggested. "We'll find him." It cost $500 and 2 weeks of investigation, but the detective managed to locate him. Robert Johnson, 52 years old, working as a construction foreman in a town in the interior, married again, with a 6-year-old son. "He agreed to meet with you," the detective said over the phone. "But he asked not to mention that you're sick. He wants it to be a surprise." We scheduled the meeting at a park in the interior town on a Saturday afternoon. Michael drove with me there, 3 hours of road that passed like 3 minutes due to my anxiety. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Michael asked for the 10th time when we parked near the park. "I am," I replied, adjusting my scarf. I was wearing a light blue dress, my mom's favorite, and had put on extra foundation to disguise the pallor from chemotherapy. I recognized my father immediately, even after 10 years. He was sitting on a bench near the playground, graying hair, thinner than I remembered, but with the same hunched posture I kept in memory. I approached slowly, heart beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Dad?" He looked up and I saw the shock in his eyes. He stood up abruptly, as if he had been startled. "Emma, my God! Emma! It's me, Dad." We stood there for an eternal moment, two strangers who were once father and daughter, trying to find words for a decade of silence. You grew up," he said, voice choked. "You became a beautiful woman." "Thank you," I murmured, not knowing what to do with my hands. "Why did you look for me after so long?" The question was fair. Why really? I took a deep breath and decided to be completely honest. "Because I'm dying, Dad." He seemed not to understand. "What do you mean, dying?" "I have cancer, ovarian cancer, advanced stage. Doctors gave me a few months to live." I saw his face turn white, his legs wobble. He sat heavily on the bench. "No, it can't be. You're so young." "It's true, Dad. And before I die, I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to say that I forgive you." "Forgive me? For what?" I looked at him with incredulity. "For the years you hit my mom. For all the times you came home drunk and turned our life into hell. For abandoning Jake and me when we needed you most." He began to cry, silent crying, from someone who had carried guilt for years. "Emma, I was a coward. I was weak. I drank to forget problems and only created bigger problems. Your mother and you kids deserved much better." "We deserved a father," I said, feeling my own tears. "We deserved someone who would protect us, not threaten us." I know, and that ate at me all these years. After you left, I kept drinking, lost my job, almost died. Until one day," he paused, wiping his face with his shirt sleeve. "One day I woke up in a gutter, literally in a gutter, and realized I had become human trash. That's when I met Father Miguel, who helped me stop drinking and brought me back to God." "You went back to church?" "I did. 8 years ago. I became a practicing Catholic, married Maria. We have little Pedro. But not a day goes by that I don't think about you kids, that I don't regret what I did." We sat in silence for a few minutes, me processing his words, him waiting for my reaction. "I forgive you, Dad," I said finally. "Really, not because you deserve it, but because I need to. I don't want to die carrying this resentment." He looked at me with a mixture of gratitude and incredulity. "How can you forgive me after everything?" "Because I learned that forgiving is a gift we give ourselves. And because I'm still your daughter, right?" That's when he stood up and hugged me. A tight, desperate hug from someone who had a second chance they never expected to receive. "I love you, little girl," he whispered in my ear. "I always loved you. Even being a terrible father, I always loved you." "I love you too, Dad," I replied, and realized it was true. Michael, who had been waiting in the car, approached when he saw me wave. "Dad, this is Michael, my fiancé." "Fiancé?" My father smiled for the first time. "That's great. Nice to meet you, son," he said, shaking Michael's hand firmly. "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Robert. Emma talks about you a lot," Michael lied diplomatically. "I hope not," my father laughed, embarrassed. "He wants to meet your family," I suggested, seeing that the ice was broken. "Really? You want to come to my house?" "We do," I confirmed. My father's house was simple but cozy, in a residential neighborhood of the town. Maria, his wife, was a nice woman about 35 years old, who received me with genuine affection. "Robert talks about you and Jake so much," she said, serving me coffee. "He was dying to meet you." Pedro, my half-brother, was a beautiful 6-year-old child, full of energy and curiosity. "Are you my sister?" he asked, examining me with interest. "I am. I'm your older sister." "Cool. Now I have a sister. Dad, can I show her my toys?" We spent the entire afternoon talking. My father told about his transformation, about how the church helped him rebuild himself as a person. Maria talked about how he was a good husband and father now, but always carried the sadness of having lost his children from his first marriage. "You didn't lose us, Dad," I said before we left. "You found us again." When we left, he hugged me again. "Thank you, little girl. Thank you for giving me a chance to ask for forgiveness. And thank you for becoming this incredible woman, despite me." "Mom did a good job alone," I said, smiling. "She did. Your mother is a warrior, and you take after her." On the way back to Los Angeles, Michael drove in silence while I processed everything that had happened. "How do you feel?" he asked. Light, I replied, surprised by my own answer. For the first time in 10 years, I feel light. Only one wish remained: getting married in church to the great love of my life. Michael had a special way of proposing to me, but cancer accelerated our plans. One night, after a particularly difficult chemotherapy session, he knelt beside my hospital bed. Emma Claire Johnson, he said, taking a small box from his pocket. Will you marry me? It was a simple but beautiful ring, with a small diamond that sparkled under the cold hospital light. Michael, are you sure? I might die. And I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, he interrupted. Life doesn't come with a warranty, love, but I'm sure I want to spend the time we have together as your husband. Yes, I whispered, extending my trembling hand. Yes, I want to marry you. The ring fit perfectly. Michael told me later that he had asked my mom for the size weeks before. We organized a simple but beautiful wedding at the neighborhood church, the same one where I had found strength in Pastor Thomas's sermon. My mom and my Aunt Susan took care of all the details: flowers, decoration, simple buffet, photographer. It's going to be the most beautiful wedding in Los Angeles, my mom said, running around for quotes and suppliers. The most surprising thing was that my father asked to walk me down the aisle. I know I don't deserve this honor, he said during one of our phone conversations. But if you'll let me, I'd really like to give you away to Michael. Dad, I replied, moved. It would be an honor to have you walk me down the aisle. 2 weeks before the wedding, I had a relapse. The chemotherapy wasn't working as expected, and my body was getting weaker. Dr. Williams was direct with me. Emma, we need to consider palliative care. The curative treatment isn't having the expected effect. Palliative care. Translation: there's nothing more to do. We'll just try to keep you comfortable until the end. How long? I asked, surprisingly calm. Hard to say. A few months, maybe. Michael held my hand tight when we left the office. We're getting married next week, he said with determination. We're not waiting anymore. And so it was. We changed the wedding date to the following Saturday. My mom and Aunt Susan worked miracles to move everything up. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up feeling strangely good. It was as if my body had saved energy especially for that day. My aunt helped me get dressed. The dress was simple but elegant, borrowed from a cousin, specially adjusted for me. With the special scarf my mom had bought, which looked more like a delicate veil, I felt beautiful for the first time in months. You're radiant, my mom said, with tears in her eyes. Even like this, you're radiant. My father arrived punctually, elegant in a borrowed dark suit. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. My beautiful little girl, he murmured. You look like an angel. The church was full. Friends from college, work colleagues, people from my church, some members of the Living Hope group, even Victoria had gotten special authorization to leave and come to my wedding. When the doors opened and the wedding march began to play, I felt my heart race. My father offered his arm, and we walked slowly down the central aisle. Michael was at the altar, handsome in a black suit and silver tie, with teary eyes. When he saw me entering, he began to cry openly, not caring who was watching. Pastor Thomas was waiting for us with a radiant smile. He had been the one who agreed to speed up all the arrangements for the church wedding. Who gives this woman to marry this man? He asked, following the ritual. I, Robert Johnson, father of the bride, give her with much love and pride, my father replied, kissing my forehead before placing my hand in Michael's. The ceremony was moving. Pastor Thomas spoke about true love, about how love conquers even death, about how two united hearts become one. Michael, do you take Emma as your wife, to love and respect her in joy and sorrow, in health and sickness, all the days of your life? I do, Michael replied, voice firm despite the tears. Emma, do you take Michael as your husband, to love and respect him in joy and sorrow, in health and sickness, all the days of your life? I do, I replied, feeling that I was sealing not only our union, but also the fulfillment of all my dreams. We exchanged simple rings, but they meant the world to us. When Pastor Thomas said, "You may kiss the bride," Michael kissed me with infinite tenderness, as if he wanted to keep that moment forever. The party was small but joyful in the church hall itself. We danced our first song as husband and wife, All of Me by John Legend, the same one that played at my graduation, when we kissed for the first time. We did it, I whispered in his ear while we danced. Did what? All 7 wishes. We managed to fulfill them all. We did, he smiled, making me spin slowly. And now? Now we live each day as if it were the last, I replied, because it might be. But at that moment, dancing in my husband's arms, surrounded by all the people I loved, I felt complete. It didn't matter what came next. I had lived fully, loved deeply, forgiven completely. The 7 wishes were fulfilled, but the most important thing was just beginning, being Michael's wife for as long as God would allow us. 3 months after the wedding, on a Tuesday morning, I woke up very weak. Michael took me to the hospital, but this time it was different. My body was tired, very tired. "It's time," I whispered to him, holding his hand. "No, love. You're going to be okay. You always get better." "Michael," I said with all the strength I still had. "It was perfect. Our story was perfect. Thank you for making all my dreams come true. Thank you for letting me be part of them," he replied, kissing my hand. "Promise me something? Anything. Keep the work at the hospital, keep the prayer group, and be happy. When the pain passes, allow yourself to be happy again. I promise," he said, crying. "I love you, Emma Claire Anderson. I love you too, Michael James Anderson. Forever." I closed my eyes, feeling complete peace. I had camped under the stars, learned to cook for someone I loved, flown in a balloon at sunset, created a prayer group that changed lives, helped imprisoned women find hope, forgiven my father, and married in church with my great love. 7 wishes. 7 experiences that transformed not only my life, but the lives of several other people. I died knowing that every day was lived intensely, that every moment was worthwhile. A week after Emma's funeral, I returned to the lookout where we fulfilled her first wish. I was alone, carrying in my chest the pain of longing, and in my heart all the memories we built together. I sat in the same place where we had camped, where we saw our heart-shaped constellation, where we made love under the stars for the first time. The sun was setting, painting the sky with the same colors we saw from the balloon. "Hi, love," I spoke to the wind. I came back to our special place. I took a red rose I had brought, her favorite flower, and left it there among the stones where we set up our tent that first magical night. "We did it, didn't we? We managed to fulfill all your dreams." And there, alone in that sacred place for both of us, I understood that Emma hadn't really left. She was alive in living hope, which continued to bring comfort to hospital patients. She was alive in the New Beginning project, which had already transformed the lives of more than 50 imprisoned women. She was alive in the reconciliation with her father, who now regularly visited his mother-in-law and brother-in-law. She was alive in every person we touched during our journey through the 7 wishes.
3 days after the funeral, my mother-in-law, Mrs. Carmen, called me for a private conversation. Her eyes were red, but there was something peaceful in her expression. "Michael, Emma left something for you," she said, taking a white envelope from her purse. "She asked me to deliver it only after she was gone." My hand trembled as I took the envelope. I immediately recognized Emma's delicate handwriting on the front. "To my eternal love, Michael." "She wrote this a month ago, Mrs. Carmen explained, her voice choked. "She said she wanted to make sure you received it at the right time." I went home and spent hours looking at that envelope without the courage to open it. It was like it was her last gift, the last conversation we would have. When I finally found the strength, I sat in the armchair where she used to knit and opened it carefully. "My dear Michael, if you're reading this letter, it means my journey here has come to an end. Don't be sad. I write these words with a heart full of gratitude, not sadness. I want you to know that the last few years by your side were the happiest of my life. From that day in the food truck line, when you wiped the sauce from my mouth so delicately, I knew I had found my soulmate. You loved me in my best moments, and in the worst ones too. You loved me when I was beautiful in my wedding dress and when I was bald from chemotherapy. You loved me when I laughed and when I cried in pain. That pure and unconditional love was my greatest treasure. Thank you for making all my dreams come true. Thank you for camping with me under the stars, for eating my French dish with such tenderness, for flying with me in a balloon at sunset. Thank you for supporting me in volunteer work, for accompanying me to the prison, for giving me courage to forgive my father. And thank you, especially for marrying me and giving me the honor of being your wife, even if for a short time. But now I need to ask you something very important, my love. Be happy, really happy. I know it will hurt for a while, I know the longing will tighten your chest many times, but I don't want you to be tied to me forever. I want you to live, to love again, to build a beautiful family, and be the wonderful father I know you can be. Michael, when you meet someone special, and you will, don't feel guilty. Don't think you're betraying me or forgetting me. Love is not possessive, my dear. Love liberates. Love wants what's best for the other, even when that means letting go. You have all my consent, all my blessing to fall in love again. I want you to have beautiful children, for you to teach them about the stars like you taught me, for you to cook for your new family with the same care you cooked for me. This doesn't diminish what we had. This honors what we had. Because it was you who taught me that love multiplies when it's shared. Continue the work at the hospital. Keep helping the women at the prison. Maintain contact with my father and my family. But don't do it as an obligation to me. Do it because it's good for you, because it makes you the incredible person you've always been. And when you're ready to love again, look at the sky and search for our constellation. It will be there, shining, reminding me that you were happy with me and will be happy again. That's all I want. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. 1 Corinthians 13:4-8. I love you forever and beyond eternity. Your wife, who will never forget you, Emma. I cried like I hadn't cried since the day she died. But it wasn't a cry of despair. It was a cry of gratitude, of love, of liberation. My Emma, even in leaving, continued caring for me, giving me permission to be happy again. I kept the letter in a special box, along with our wedding photo and a dried rose from the first bouquet I gave her at the hospital. It was my most precious treasure, not as a chain that tied me to the past, but as a blessing that freed me for the future. A week later, I returned to the hospital for the first prayer group meeting without Emma. I was nervous, didn't know if I could continue without her. Michael, said Marcus, one of the group's founders, Emma taught us that love is stronger than death. Let's honor her memory by continuing the work. And we continued. Every Thursday, from 7 to 8 p.m., we bring hope to those who need it most. It's been 2 years now, and the group has grown to more than 30 volunteers. On the last visit to the prison, Victoria gave me news that warmed my heart. Michael, I passed the college entrance exam. I'm going to study psychology, like I always dreamed. When I get out of here, I want to work helping other women like me. Emma would be very proud, I replied, moved. She is proud, Victoria corrected. I'm sure she is. My mother-in-law always says I carry Emma with me wherever I go. And it's true. I carry her smile, her determination, her infinite capacity to forgive and love. I carry the lesson she taught me, that it doesn't matter how much time we have, but how we use that time. I still visit her grave every Saturday, always bringing fresh flowers, red roses, her favorites. I tell her about the work at the hospital, about the achievements of the women at the prison, about how her father has been an incredible grandfather to little Pedro. Thank you, Emma, I always end up saying. Thank you for teaching me that true love never ends. And thank you for giving me permission to be happy again. I love you, forever. And when I leave the cemetery, I look at the sky and search for our constellation. It's always there, shining, reminding me that some things are eternal, but that life continues, and true love wants our happiness, not our imprisonment. Emma's 7 wishes became 7 legacies that continue changing lives every day. And maybe that's the true definition of immortality, living forever in the good we do, in the love we leave, in the lives we touch. Emma didn't die. She just changed addresses, from my heart to the heart of everyone who was touched by her light. And she left in me not just longing, but also the freedom to love again when my heart is ready. And I promise to continue spreading that light throughout the world, living fully as she taught me, until the day we meet again. Forever grateful, my love. Forever free to love again. Because love is stronger than death, and true love always liberates. Inspired by Song of Songs, 8:2-6.